There is only one photograph from the past hanging in my house, me in front of the Spokane water treatment plant. I'm not even smiling. I'm just standing there in a blue jumpsuit, wearing a helmet at a jaunty angle, looking straight into the camera. This photo was taken on my first day at work, 38 years ago. My husband hadn't left yet. My son hadn't learned to hate me, and life seemed simple and straightforward. I am 73 years old. My name is Vren Quill, and I have lived my entire life in Spokane, Washington. I never thought that in my old age I would be a lonely woman, reminiscing while sitting in a chair by the window. I always imagined that Garrick would be by my side, that we would grow old together, as we promised each other in our youth. Garrick left exactly 30 years ago. He didn't say anything, just packed his things and left a note on the kitchen table. "I'm sorry, but I can't live like this anymore." Later, I learned that living like this meant living with me. A wife who smelled of bleach after her shift at the water treatment plant. A wife who was too tired to cook fancy dinners. A wife who preferred to spend her day off reading a book rather than going shopping. His new love, Alawan, was 15 years younger, worked in the factory's accounting department, and smelled of expensive perfume. Thatcher was 12 at the time. He didn't cry when his father left. He just looked at me with his gray eyes, just like Garrick's, and said nothing. And then he asked, "What did you do to make him leave?" That question started it all. The accusations, the reproaches, the silent hatred, as if I were to blame for his father falling in love with another woman. After Garrick left, I had to take on extra shifts at work. The Spokane water treatment plant wasn't the most pleasant place for a woman, but the pay was good, especially for night shifts. Standing at the control panels, monitoring the indicators, recording data in the log, it was monotonous work that tired my eyes and numbed my fingers. The smell of chlorine ate into my skin so deeply that no soap could wash it off. My male colleagues laughed at me at first, but then they got used to it. I was the only woman at the station who lasted more than a year. Thatcher grew up sullen and withdrawn. He was a good student, but he had almost no friends. He left the house early in the morning and came back late at night, and we could go days without talking. When he turned 16, he put a lock on his bedroom door. "So you don't go through my stuff," he said, even though I never did. After graduating from high school, Thatcher immediately left to study in Seattle. He didn't come home for Christmas or Thanksgiving. He called once a month, and the conversation was always short and formal. "Yes, I'm fine." "No, I don't need any money." "Yes, my studies are going well." And so it went for 4 years. After college, he returned to Spokane and got a job at a computer security company. He rented an apartment on the other side of town and came to see me once a month, no more. He would sit in an armchair, drink tea, and talk about work, but never about his personal life. I knew he had girlfriends, but he never brought any of them home. And then Ottilie appeared. I remember the day Thatcher brought her to Sunday dinner. It was October, drizzling rain, and yellow leaves stuck to our shoes. Ottilie came into the house, wiped her feet on the doormat, and smiled at me, broadly and openly, as one smiles at old friends. "Hello, Mrs. Quill," she said, extending her hand. "I've heard so much about you from Thatcher." Her handshake was firm and confident. She was tall and thin, with short red hair and pale skin sprinkled with freckles. Her eyes were bright green, like a cat's. She wore a simple black dress and a silver necklace in the shape of a bird's skull. Later, I learned that she had made it herself. "Ottilie is a taxidermist," Thatcher said, taking off his jacket. "She makes stuffed animals for museums and private collectors." "That's an interesting profession," I replied, not knowing what else to say. "Oh, it's a real art." Ottilie exclaimed as she walked into the living room. You have to preserve the soul of the animal, you understand? So that it looks alive even after death. At dinner, she talked a lot about her work, exhibitions, and travels. Thatcher was silent, looking at her with undisguised adoration. I hadn't seen that expression on his face since he was 10 years old and his father took him fishing. After dinner, Ottilie helped me clear the table and wash the dishes. She asked me about little Thatcher, what he was like as a child. She laughed at stories about his first teacher, whom he called Mrs. Dinosaur, about how he was afraid of haircuts and hid under the bed when it was time to go to the barber. She seemed genuinely interested in my life. What did you do before you retired? Ottilie asked, wiping the last plate. I worked at a water treatment plant, I replied. 35 years. Wow, that's so unusual for a woman. There was something in her voice that I couldn't quite place. Maybe a hint of contempt? But her smile remained as broad and open as ever. I had to, I said briefly. After my husband left, I had to feed my family somehow. Oh, yes. Thatcher told me that his father, well, left. She lowered her voice as if we were talking about something indecent. It must have been hard for you. I managed, I replied, hanging the towel on a hook. They left shortly after that. Thatcher hugged me goodbye, for the first time in many years. Ottilie hugged me too, pressing her cheek against mine. It was so nice to meet you, Mrs. Quill, she said. I hope we'll see each other often. And they started coming every Sunday. Ottilie always brought something for tea. Cookies, cake, cupcakes. She always helped with the dishes and always asked about my life. She asked about the garden, the books I was reading, the neighbors. In public, she was the perfect future daughter-in-law, attentive, caring, kind. But sometimes when we were alone, I noticed a change in her expression. Her smile became strained, her eyes cold. It only lasted a second, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something completely different was hiding behind her friendly mask. Once, I walked into the kitchen while she was talking on the phone. She was standing by the window with her back to me and didn't notice me. Yes, she still has the same porcelain figurines on the mantelpiece, she said to someone. It's so tacky. And the smell. You won't believe it, but her house smells old. You know, that musty smell, like in an antique shop. I froze in the doorway, not knowing what to do. Go in or quietly leave. No, she's quite nice, just boring. Can you imagine? She worked at a water treatment plant her whole life. Thatcher says she always smelled of bleach. No wonder his father ran away. My heart ached, but I didn't let it show. I quietly returned to the living room and pretended I had just come out of the bathroom when Ottilie returned from the kitchen. Ah, there you are, Mrs. Quill, she said with a smile. I was just going to ask if you'd like some more tea. No, thank you, I replied, trying to keep my voice normal. I've had enough. A month later, Thatcher announced that he and Ottilie were engaged. He brought her to our house, and they sat on the sofa, holding hands, and she showed off her ring with a small diamond. The wedding will be in 6 months, Thatcher said, looking at me. In May. Congratulations, I replied, hugging them both. I'm very happy for you. Ottilie smiled, leaning against Thatcher's shoulder. We want everything to be perfect, she said. A small ceremony, just our closest friends and family. And then dinner at Clementine's restaurant. That sounds wonderful, I replied. And one more thing, Mom. Thatcher looked at me seriously. We're looking for a house. We want something of our own, you know? Of course I understand. I nodded. Every family needs a home. But prices are so high right now, Ottilie sighed. And we'd like something decent, in a good neighborhood. I immediately understood what they were getting at. In 35 years of work, I had saved up a decent amount of money. Not a huge amount, but enough for a down payment on a house. And I had a good pension. I can help with the down payment, I said, if you want. Thatcher's face lit up. Really? That would be very helpful. I have some savings, I continued. I haven't been spending much lately. Oh, Mrs. Quill, you're so generous, Ottilie exclaimed, jumping up from the sofa and hugging me. We're so grateful to you. But I didn't see gratitude in her eyes. There was something else there, as if she had just won the lottery and was now figuring out how to spend the money. A week later, Thatcher came alone. He sat down at the kitchen table and took out some papers. We found a great house, he said, laying out the photos. 3 bedrooms, a yard, a garage. In the South Hill neighborhood, I looked at the photos. A beautiful red brick house with white shutters and a porch covered in ivy. It looks wonderful, I said. How much are they asking? Thatcher named the price, and I almost choked on my tea. It was twice what I had expected. That's quite expensive, I said cautiously. Yes, but it's worth it, Thatcher replied quickly. The neighborhood is great, and there are good schools nearby. Schools? I raised my eyebrows. Are you and Ottilie planning to have children? Well, not right away, but someday. He looked away. Listen, Mom, I know it's a lot of money, but you said yourself that you wanted to help. I do. I fell silent, not knowing how to say that such a down payment would eat up almost all my savings. If you can't, just say so. His voice took on a familiar tone of hurt. We'll find another option. No, I'll help, I finally said, but on one condition. What is it? The house will be registered in my name. Until you pay me the full amount, Thatcher frowned. Why? Don't you trust me? It's not about trust, I replied. It's just the right thing to do from a legal standpoint. When you pay me back, I'll transfer the house to you. He was silent for a long time, tapping his fingers on the table. All right, he said finally, if it makes you feel better. A month later, we signed all the papers. The house was mine, but Thatcher and Ottilie were going to live in it. They moved in 2 months before the wedding. Ottilie furnished the house with such enthusiasm as if it were her own museum. Every Sunday, she showed me photos of new curtains, carpets, and lamps. Thatcher just shook his head and said she was obsessed with design. I didn't really like her taste. Too much dark wood, heavy fabrics, strange details like stuffed crows on the mantelpiece. But it was their house, and I didn't interfere. Preparations for the wedding were in full swing. Ottilie chose a dress, ordered flowers, and set the menu. Thatcher took care of the paperwork and finances. They hardly asked me anything, just checked the guest list on my side. It was short. A couple of colleagues from the water treatment plant and my neighbor, Mrs. Fowler, and asked what dress I was planning to wear. Something simple, I replied. I don't want to attract attention. Maybe we could go to the store together? Ottilie suggested one day. We can help you choose something. Appropriate. That same expression flashed across her voice again, as if she were talking about something unpleasant. Thanks, but I can manage on my own, I replied. I have a blue dress that I wore to a colleague's anniversary. It's quite decent blue? Ottilie grimaced. But we're going with a pastel color scheme. Pink, peach, light green. Blue will stand out. I can wear something else if you want, I said, even though I didn't have any other fancy dresses. That would be great, she smiled. We want everything to be perfect. You understand? After they left, I sat by the window for a long time, looking at the garden. The tulips had already bloomed. but the irises were just beginning to bloom. Garrick always loved irises. He said they looked like butterflies perched on stems. After he left, I almost pulled up all those flowers, but then I decided it was silly to punish the plants for his betrayal. I wonder what Garrick would have said if he had seen Ottilie. Would he have liked his son's fiancée? What would he have thought of her bright green eyes, the silver turtles around her neck, her ability to smile so widely and openly, hiding completely different feelings behind that smile? Outside the window, it began to rain. Quietly, drizzling, like the day Thatcher first brought Ottilie to our house. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine what I would look like at their wedding, an old woman in a new dress that I would have to buy just to fit in with the pastel color scheme. The groom's mother, who smells of old age and keeps tasteless porcelain figurines on the mantelpiece. Thatcher always said I was too suspicious. Maybe I'm exaggerating this time too? Maybe Ottilie just wants everything to be beautiful, and her words have no hidden meaning. But something told me that where we were now was only the beginning of the journey, and I wasn't sure I would like where that journey was leading. April was unusually rainy. I rarely left the house, except to go grocery shopping and to the post office. Thatcher called almost every day, but not to ask how I was doing, but to share the latest wedding news. The wedding preparations had completely consumed him, or rather, Ottilie had consumed him with her endless ideas. "We've decided to order different flowers," he said one evening. Ottilie says white peonies go better with her dress than roses." "But you've already paid for the roses," I pointed out, remembering how 2 weeks ago Thatcher had complained about the high cost of the floral arrangements. "Yes, but it's a wedding, Mom. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect." I heard that phrase from them so often that it began to sound like a mantra. The perfect dress, the perfect rings, the perfect cake, the perfect invitations. It was as if the wedding was not the beginning of a life together, but the final destination for which it was worth spending all their savings. A month before the wedding, Ottilie called me herself, for the first time ever. "Mrs. Quill," her voice sounded excited. "Could you come over today? I need your help with the invitations I agreed, although I found it strange that she was asking me to help with this. As far as I knew, the invitations should have been sent out a week ago. Their house, my house, legally speaking, greeted me with the smell of paint and glue. Dozens of paper cards, ribbons, and stickers were spread out on a large table in the living room. Ottilie sat in the middle of this chaos, concentrating on tying tiny bows. "Ah, Mrs. Quill!" She looked up when I entered. "Thank you for coming." "I'm completely confused with these invitations. What needs to be done?" I asked, taking off my jacket. "You have to fold them like this," she showed me an example. "Then insert the menu card, then tie the ribbon, and write the address on the envelope by hand." In calligraphic handwriting, I looked at the mountain of invitations. "How many are there?" 120. 120? I was surprised. "But you said it would be a small ceremony, just for close friends and family." "Well, yes." Atelier waved her hand vaguely. "But it turned out that we couldn't not invite Thatcher's colleagues, and my clients from the museum, and friends from college. Anyway, the list grew a little. We sat at the table for almost 4 hours. My fingers, unaccustomed to such detailed work, quickly grew tired. Atelier showed me samples of calligraphy, frowned when I made mistakes, and redid everything. By the end of the day, we had only managed to prepare half of the invitations. "Shall we continue tomorrow?" she suggested, stretching. Thatcher should be back from work soon, and we still wanted to look at samples of napkins for the restaurant. "Of course," I replied, stretching my stiff neck. "I'll come back tomorrow." Just as I was about to leave, the doorbell rang. Ottilie opened the door, and a burst of loud laughter filled the house. Standing on the doorstep was a tall woman with long black hair tied back in a ponytail. She was wearing a bright floral print dress and chunky silver earrings. Tallulah! Ottilie exclaimed, hugging her. You made it after all! How could I miss my best friend's final dress fitting? Tallulah replied, entering the house. When she saw me, she paused for a second, then smiled. Oh, hello. You must be Thatcher's mother? Yes, I nodded. Vren Quill? Tallulah Farnsworth. She held out her hand. Ottilie and I have been friends since school. Her handshake was firm, like Ottilie's, but more sincere. There was none of the coldness in Tallulah's eyes that I sometimes saw in my future daughter-in-law. I'm leaving now, I said, reaching for the door handle. See you tomorrow, Ottilie. Of course, Mrs. Quill, she nodded. See you tomorrow. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me, but then remembered that I had left my scarf in the living room. When I returned, I heard Tallulah laughing loudly. She made you do the invitations? Seriously? Poor old lady. Her fingers must be covered in blisters now. Quiet. Ottilie's voice was muffled. She might hear you. Come on, she's gone. Tallulah waved her hand dismissively. And anyway, why did you invite her? You could have asked the girls from the wedding agency. Thatcher said it would help her feel needed, Ottilie replied with a heavy sigh. Can you believe she even got upset that we didn't ask her to bake the wedding cake? As if I would let guests be served some kind of homemade concoction. They both laughed. I froze at the door, not knowing what to do. Go in or leave without taking my scarf. What about the dress? Tallulah asked. Did she buy anything decent? Not yet, Ottilie replied. She says she wants to go shopping next week. I hope she doesn't choose something from the 80s with huge shoulders. God, that would be a disaster. Tallulah laughed again. Just imagine, an old lady in sequins and bouffant hair. All the photos would be ruined. Don't remind me, moaned Ottilie. I've already told the photographer to try not to take close-ups of her. Are you serious? Tallulah sounded surprised. Absolutely. I want these photos to be something we can show our children, not scare them with their dinosaur grandmother. They laughed again. Something inside me snapped. I quietly walked away from the door and left the house, leaving the scarf inside. All the way home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been doused with something sticky and cold. The next day, I called Ottilie and told her that I wasn't feeling well and wouldn't be able to come and help with the invitations. She expressed regret, but I heard relief in her voice. Tallulah must have agreed to help instead of me. I didn't talk to Thatcher or Ottilie for a week. The phone rang several times, but I didn't answer it. I didn't want to hear the false concern in my future daughter-in-law's voice or the indifference in my son's. Instead, I worked in the garden, weeding the iris beds, trimming the hedge, planting new tulips. Physical work always helped me think, and I had a lot to think about. The wedding was less than a month away, and I had to decide how to behave. I could pretend I hadn't heard anything, smile at Ottilie, and play the role of the happy mother of the groom. I could have told Thatcher what I had overheard, but he would hardly have believed me. To him, Ottilie was the perfect bride, and I was just an old woman who was always dissatisfied with everything. In the end, I decided to maintain my dignity. I wouldn't make a scene, but I wouldn't let them treat me like a burden. After all, I bought them their house. I worked my whole life so that Thatcher could get an education and live comfortably. It was me, not some crazy taxidermist with green eyes and a fake smile. When Thatcher finally came to see me, 10 days after the invitation incident, I had calmed down enough to talk to him normally. "Mom, are you avoiding us?" he asked, sitting down in the chair opposite me. Ottilie says you're not answering your phone. I've been busy, I replied, pouring tea. Spring is a busy time for a gardener. Our wedding is in 3 weeks, he reminded me, as if I could forget. There's still so much to do. Like what? Well, for example, you need to buy a dress. And shoes. And a hat, if you want. I've already found a dress, I lied. Don't worry. Really? He looked surprised. What color? Light green, I replied, remembering Ottilie's words about pastel colors. Very simple, without any unnecessary embellishments. Excellent, he nodded, clearly pleased. Ottilie will be happy. We drank tea in silence. Thatcher looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes. His hair needed a cut. His shirt was wrinkled. It didn't seem like the upcoming wedding was making him happy. How's work? I asked to break the silence. Fine, he shrugged. Lots of projects right now. And the house? Do you like it there? Yes, it's a great house. He perked up. Spacious? Bright? Atelier ordered new furniture for the living room. It should be delivered next week. New furniture? I was surprised. But you just bought a sofa and armchairs. Attilia says they don't match the wallpaper. He shrugged again, as if that explained everything. And what will you do with the old furniture? We'll sell it, probably. Or throw it away if no one buys it. I kept quiet, although I wanted to ask where they got the money for new furniture when they had just spent so much on the house and the wedding. But that question might have seemed tactless. By the way, Mom, Thatcher put his cup on the table and looked at me seriously. I wanted to talk to you about finances. What finances? I asked, although I already guessed what he was getting at. The restaurant raised the price of the banquet, he said, looking away, by about 20%. Something about inflation and food prices. Anyway, we need to pay extra. How much? He named the amount, and I almost choked on my tea. It was almost twice the original cost of the banquet. That's not 20%, Thatcher, I pointed out. It's much more than that. Well, the cake has gone up in price, and the musicians are asking for more. He began tapping his fingers nervously on the armrest of his chair. In short, we're short. And I thought, maybe you could help. Last time, I promise, I looked at my son and didn't recognize him. Where was the principled boy who refused to take money from me for pocket money, preferring to earn extra money as a newspaper delivery boy, who saved up for his first computer and was proud that he bought it himself? When did he turn into a person who so easily asks his mother for money without even explaining what it will be used for? I already gave you money for the house, I said calmly, and for the down payment on the restaurant. And for the rings. I know, Mom, he sighed, and I'm very grateful. But this is a wedding. It only happens once in a lifetime. I'd like to believe that, I thought. But aloud I said, Okay, I'll help. How much do you need? He named the amount again, and I nodded silently. My savings were melting away at a catastrophic rate, but I consoled myself with the thought that this was the last time. After the wedding, they would live their own lives, and I would no longer have to pay for their whims. Thanks, Mom. Thatcher smiled with obvious relief. You're really helping us out. He left shortly after, promising to stop by the following week to pick up the check. I stood at the window, watching his car disappear around the bend, and felt that something was wrong. Something was wrong with this wedding. Something was wrong with Ottilie. Something was wrong with Thatcher. It was as if I were watching a play where all the actors were playing their parts. But something unpleasant was hidden behind the beautiful scenery. The next day, I decided to go to the bank and check my account balance. I wasn't very familiar with online banking, preferring the old-fashioned way, a personal visit to the branch. The nice girl at the counter printed out my statement for the last 6 months. I sat in the corner of the room, studying the long columns of numbers, and felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. The money was indeed disappearing at an alarming rate. The first large transfer was for the house, then for the rings, then for the banquet, then for Otilie's dress, and some other small amounts that I didn't remember approving. It turned out that in 6 months I had spent almost all my savings. Very little remained, just the amount that Thatcher had asked for as a surcharge for the restaurant. Unpleasant thoughts swirled in my head. What if they were just using me? What if all of Otilie's smiles, all of her words about how wonderful I was, were just a way to get money out of me? What if Thatcher had told her about my savings, and they had decided to take them while I was still alive? It sounded paranoid, but some facts supported my theory. For example, the way Ottilie talked about me with her friend, or how quickly Thatcher started asking me for money, even though he used to be proud and independent, or how they constantly changed their plans, each time demanding more and more money. I decided to do a little investigating. That same day, I called Clementine's, the restaurant where the banquet was to be held. I introduced myself as the groom's mother and said I wanted to clarify some details. The administrator was very kind. "Yes, the Quill Pendergast wedding, May 21st, she said, checking her computer. "Magnolia Room, banquet for 50 people." 50? I asked. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," she replied. "We have confirmation from Miss Pendergast. 50 people, classic menu, champagne included." "What about the price increase?" I asked. "My son said the restaurant raised its prices by 20%. There was silence on the other end of the line. "Ma'am, we haven't raised our prices this season," the manager finally said. "All the terms of the contract remain the same." I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking. Thatcher had lied to me. Why? Where would the money he asked for actually go? And then I remembered the new furniture for the living room. How Otilie was constantly ordering things for the house. How they changed their plans without considering the cost. They were simply spending my money on their whims and telling me it was for the wedding. Another detail bothered me. Thatcher said they had invited 120 people, but the restaurant only confirmed an order for 50. Where did the other 70 invitations go? Did they just make up that number, so I wouldn't wonder why they had ordered so many expensive invitations? The more I thought about it, the more inconsistencies I found. And the more I became convinced that Otilie and Thatcher were hiding something from me. That this whole wedding was nothing more than a performance designed to get money out of me. But why? What did they plan to do after they took all my savings? This question kept me awake all night, and I hardly slept, tossing and turning in my old bed. There was only a week left before the wedding. I finally bought a dress. Light green, simple, without any fancy details. It wasn't that I really wanted to match Otilie's pastel colors, but I decided not to give them any extra reasons to mock me. At least this way, they wouldn't have anything to criticize me for. Thatcher came by twice that week, once to pick up the check for the restaurant surcharge, and once to bring me the invitation. It was a beautiful paper card with gold embossing, tied with a silk ribbon. Inside, my name and the wedding date were written in calligraphic handwriting. I looked at the card and thought about how much it must have cost. At least $30, according to the catalogs Ottilie had shown me. $30 for a piece of paper that would end up in the trash after the wedding. The day before the wedding, Thatcher called and said they needed my help with the final preparations. I didn't really want to go, but I couldn't refuse. After all, my only son was getting married tomorrow. I packed a bag with an outfit for the ceremony and went to see them. The house looked unusually clean and empty. All the knickknacks that Ottilie had filled the shelves with were gone. There were no stuffed birds, no strange ceramic figurines, not even framed photographs, just bare walls and a minimum of furniture. What happened to your things? I asked as I entered the living room. Atelier was sitting on the sofa, surrounded by boxes and bags. Her hair was styled in an elaborate hairdo, apparently rehearsing for tomorrow. She looked up and smiled. That same broad open smile that had once seemed sincere to me. "Ah, Mrs. Quill!" she exclaimed, standing up. "Thank you for coming. We've packed everything to make the move easier." "Move?" I asked in surprise. "Where to? Didn't Thatcher tell you?" She looked surprised. "We found a bigger house in a better neighborhood." "We're moving there after our honeymoon, but—" I was confused. "You just moved in here, and you spent so much money on renovations and furniture." "Well, she shrugged, "this house is fine for a start, but Thatcher and I want more. Especially considering that we're going to have a baby soon." "A baby?" I almost choked with surprise. "Are you pregnant?" "Not yet," she laughed. "But we're planning to. And we want the child to have their own room, and a bigger garden, and a 2-car garage." She continued to talk about the advantages of the new house, but I was hardly listening. Only one thought was spinning in my head. They were selling the house I had bought for them, the house that had cost me almost all my savings. And they hadn't even bothered to tell me about it. "Have you already found a buyer for the house?" I asked, trying to keep my voice normal. "Yes, a family from Portland." Ottilie nodded. "They're moving to Spokane next month." They offered a good price, so we agreed. "I see," I said, though I didn't understand anything. "Is Thatcher home?" "No. He went to the restaurant to check if everything is ready for tomorrow. He should be back in an hour or two." I nodded and went to the kitchen to pour myself some water. My hands were shaking. They were selling the house without telling me. The house that legally belongs to me. How are they going to do that? And where will the money from the sale go? After drinking the water, I returned to the living room. Ottilie was rummaging through one of the boxes, looking for something. "Mrs. Quill," she said without looking up. "I wanted to talk to you." "About tomorrow, yes?" I sat down in the chair opposite her. You see, she finally found what she was looking for, a small box. "Thatcher and I really appreciate everything you've done for us. We really do. But—" she paused, searching for the right words. "But we want everything to be perfect tomorrow, without any complications." "What do you mean?" I asked, although I already had a guess. Ottilie sighed and looked me straight in the eye. "I'll be frank, Mrs. Quill. Your presence at the wedding, how can I put this, doesn't quite fit in with our concept." "My presence?" I felt the blood rush to my face. "At my son's wedding?" "Yes." She nodded, as if we were discussing the weather. "You see, we have a certain aesthetic. Young, beautiful people, fashionable outfits, modern music. And you, well, you don't quite fit into that picture." I looked at her, not believing my ears. This girl, whom I had recently considered sweet and well-mannered, was telling me to my face that I was too old and unattractive for their wedding. "Does Thatcher know you feel this way?" I asked quietly. "Of course," she smiled. "We discuss everything. He agrees that you would be uncomfortable among all these young people. You understand. Loud music, dancing until morning. It's not for someone your age." I sat silently, trying to comprehend what was happening. My son, my Thatcher, whom I raised alone, for whom I worked 2 jobs so he could attend a good university. He agreed that his mother should not be present at his wedding. "What are you suggesting?" I finally asked. Ottilie stood up and came over to me, holding out a box she had taken out of her bag. "Here," she said. "This is for you." From both of us, I opened the box. Inside were some keys and a brochure. I took it out and read the title, Sunny Valley, a home for active retirees. What is this? I asked, even though I already knew. Nah, it's a wonderful place, Ottilie said, sitting down on the armrest of my chair. Thatcher and I have checked everything out. The conditions are excellent. A private room with a bathroom, 3 meals a day, medical staff around the clock, and lots of interesting activities. Chess, knitting, watching movies. You want to send me to a nursing home? I interrupted her. Don't call it that, she frowned. It's a residence for older people. Active, interesting people live there. You'll like it, really. I looked at the brochure, at the glossy photos of smiling old people playing bingo and sitting in armchairs in front of the TV. I felt nauseous. And when were you planning to tell me about this? I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. We thought after the wedding, Ottilie replied. We didn't want to spoil the celebration. But then we decided it would be better to tell you now so you could adjust to the idea. She spoke as if she were doing me a favor, as if the decision to send me to a nursing home was an act of kindness, not betrayal. And my house? I asked. What will happen to it? Oh, we've thought of everything. Ottilie smiled even wider. Thatcher will take care of the sale, and the money will go toward paying for your stay at Sunny Valley. It's not cheap, of course, but with careful management, the funds will last for many years. So you've decided everything, I said, closing the box, without asking me. Mrs. Quill, she put her hand on my shoulder, and I had to fight the urge to brush it off. We only want what's best for you. It's not safe for someone your age to live alone. At Sunny Valley, they'll take good care of you. And when am I supposed to move there? Well, we've booked a room for June 1st. She stood up and walked over to the window. So you still have time to pack your things, say goodbye to your neighbors. I stood up too, feeling a wave of anger rising inside me. What if I refuse? I asked bluntly. Ottilie turned around, and for a second, her face changed. The smile disappeared. Her eyes narrowed. That would be a shame, she said coldly. Thatcher really hopes you'll do the sensible thing. He said he's noticed signs of, well, age-related changes in you lately. Forgetfulness, confusion with dates. If you refuse our help now, it may be too late later. The threat was barely veiled. If I didn't agree voluntarily, they would find a way to have me declared incompetent. And then Thatcher, as my only relative, would have the right to dispose of my property and decide where I would live. I need to think about it, I said, picking up my bag, and talk to Thatcher. Of course, she smiled again. Just not today, okay? He has so much to do before the wedding. I wouldn't want to burden him with this too. Okay, I nodded. Not today. And one more thing, Mrs. Quill. Ottilie moved closer. About tomorrow. Thatcher and I thought that the best wedding gift would be if you disappeared from our family. She said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, as if she were asking for the salt at dinner. I froze, not believing my ears. Excuse me? Well, you see, she shrugged. You've already done so much for us. You bought us a house, paid for our wedding. What more could we want? And we thought, what if the best gift would be simply freedom? The freedom to start our family life without burdens. Without burdens, I repeated slowly. That is, without me. Exactly, she beamed, as if I had finally understood a complex concept. You'll be fine in Sunny Valley, and we'll be able to build our lives without worrying about how you're coping alone in a big house. It's a win-win situation. I looked at her and saw not my future sister-in-law, but a predator who had finally dropped her mask. It all became crystal clear. She and Thatcher had been planning to get rid of me from the very beginning. use me, drain my money, and then send me to live out my days in a nursing home, taking my house and the rest of my savings for themselves. I I need some air, I said, heading for the door. My head is spinning. Of course, Mrs. Quill, Ottilie nodded. Take a rest. And think about our offer. It really is the best option for everyone. I stepped out onto the porch and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding like crazy. Fragments of thoughts swirled in my head about Thatcher's betrayal, about Ottilie's deceitfulness, about how blind I had been all these months. Sitting in the car in front of their house, I tried to collect my thoughts. I needed proof of their plan, something concrete that I could show a lawyer if it came to that. Ottilie's words alone weren't enough. She could always say that I had misunderstood, that it was a joke, or that I had made up the whole conversation because of age-related changes. I decided to go back to the house while Ottilie was busy packing and look for documents. Maybe there was something there about selling the house, about Sunny Valley, about plans for my money. Entering through the back door, I quietly made my way to Thatcher's study. Ottilie was upstairs in the bedroom. I could hear her talking on the phone. Everything in the study was neatly arranged in folders. My son had always been meticulous about order. I began looking through the desk drawers, trying not to make any noise. In the third drawer, I found a folder labeled Mom. My heart ached. Even as he planned to get rid of me, Thatcher still called me Mom. Opening the folder, I saw a contract with Sunny Valley, already signed on my behalf. The signature was fake, but very similar to the real one. Next to it was a declaration of incapacity, not filled out, but ready to use. And another document, a power of attorney to manage my property, also with a fake signature. They had thought of everything. If I refused to go to the nursing home voluntarily, they would file a petition to have me declared legally incompetent. And while the court was considering the case, Thatcher would already begin to dispose of my property under the forged power of attorney. I photographed all the documents on my phone. An old model, but the camera worked well. Then I continued searching and found another folder with documents for the sale of the house where Thatcher and Ottilie now lived. There was a purchase agreement already signed by the buyers and me, another forgery. And the amount was much higher than what Ottilie had said. They weren't just selling my house without my knowledge. They were also going to pocket some of the money. I photographed these documents too, feeling my insides boiling with rage. How could they? How could Thatcher, my son, do such a thing? At that moment, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Ottilie was coming down. I quickly put the folders back in their place, closed the drawer, and slipped out of the office through another door leading to the living room. Ottilie went into the kitchen without noticing me. I was about to leave when I noticed Thatcher's phone on the coffee table. He was always absent-minded and often forgot things. I picked up the phone, not knowing exactly what I was looking for, but feeling that there might be something important there. The phone wasn't locked. Thatcher never set a password, considering it paranoid. I opened the messages and saw a conversation with someone whose number was saved as O. Ottilie? No, she had her own contact with a photo. I started reading, and my blood ran cold. I can't wait for tomorrow. It will finally be over, Thatcher wrote. Yes, just a little longer. Then freedom, replied O. Does she suspect anything? Asked Thatcher. No, she thinks I'm crazy about you, was the reply. What about the honeymoon? Can you get away? My son wrote. Yes, I'll say I'm going to my sister's in Portland. See you at our place. I leafed through the correspondence, and the picture became clearer. O was Orion, Thatcher's friend from school. They were planning to meet during the honeymoon, so Ottilie was going to cheat on my son right after the wedding? Or, I scrolled further and found confirmation of my suspicions. Orion and Ottilie had been seeing each other for several months, behind Thatcher's back. But if so, why was my son corresponding with Orion about a meeting? The answer was found in messages from a week ago. Does she still think the wedding is real? Orion asked. Yes, she has no idea it's a sham, Thatcher replied. And then what? After you've drained her of all her money? I'll put her in a nursing home, sell her house, and you and I will go somewhere where no one knows us. I almost dropped my phone. The wedding was a sham. Thatcher and Orion were together, and Atili was just an actress in their play, designed to get money out of me? Or was she also part of the deception, seeing both of them at the same time? I scrolled through a few more messages and found a photo Orion had sent to Thatcher. It showed Ottilie and Orion kissing in front of some motel. The caption read, "Your bride sends her regards." Everything fell into place. The three of them were involved in this plan. Thatcher and Orion were lovers, but they were hiding their relationship. Ottilie agreed to play the role of the bride to get money out of me. And after they got everything they wanted, my house, my savings, the money from the sale of the house in South Hill, they would disappear, leaving me in a nursing home with no means of support. I took several photos of the correspondence, trying to capture the most important messages, and then put the phone back on the table, in exactly the same position. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. Rage I hadn't felt since the day Garrick left, leaving me alone with my 12-year-old son. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I flinched and sat up straight, not knowing what to do. Ottilie came out of the kitchen, gave me a surprised look. She must have thought I had already left, and went to answer the door. Standing on the doorstep was a tall man with dark hair and broad shoulders. Orion. I had seen him a few times when he visited Thatcher in high school. Back then, he was a skinny teenager with acne. Now he was an attractive man with a confident smile. "Hi, gorgeous," he said, hugging Attilie. "Thatcher's not back yet?" "No," she shook her head. "But he should be here soon." "Oh, and his mother is here." Orion turned and saw me. Something like fear flashed across his face. "Mrs. Quill!" he exclaimed with feigned joy. "Long time no see. How are you?" "Not bad," I replied, trying to keep my voice sounding normal. "And you, Orion? How's life?" "Everything's great," he smiled nervously. I came to congratulate my best friend before his wedding." It's such an important day." I looked at them both, at Atelier with her fake smile, at Orion with his feigned cheerfulness, and felt something break inside me. My last doubts disappeared. All three of them had deceived me, used me, planned to steal everything I had. "Well," I said, picking up my bag, "it's time for me to go. See you tomorrow at the wedding." "Yes, of course," Ottilie nodded. "See you tomorrow, Mrs. Quill." I left the house, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. Only one thought ran through my head. The best gift you can give us is to disappear from our family. Well, I'll give them that gift, but not in the way they expect. On the way home, I stopped at the bank and withdrew all the money left in my account. Then I called my old colleague Jeremiah, who had retired 5 years before me and become a real estate agent. "Jeremiah," I said when he answered, "I need your help." "Urgently." "What's wrong, Vren?" he asked, sounding concerned. "I want to sell a house," I replied. "My house and another one in South Hill, and I need to do it quickly. Very quickly. How quickly?" "By tomorrow evening." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Is that possible?" I asked. "Theoretically, yes," Jeremiah replied slowly. "If you can find a buyer who's ready to make a quick deal, and if all the paperwork is in order. But why the rush?" "It's a long story," I said. "I'll tell you when we meet. Can you come to my place now? I'll be there in 20 minutes. he replied. I hung up and looked at the road ahead. The sun was setting, painting the clouds pink. It was beautiful, almost like a postcard, like the wedding invitation that now lay crumpled on the passenger seat. Thatcher, Ottilie, and Orion wanted me out of their lives. Well, I'll disappear. But first, I'll take everything they plan to steal from me, and I'll leave them a gift they'll never forget. Jeremiah arrived exactly 20 minutes later, as promised. I was already waiting for him on the porch, with a folder of documents. In 35 years of working at water treatment plants, I had learned to value punctuality and order. When you deal with chemicals and purification systems, being late or careless can cost lives. Now these qualities came in handy. Vren, Jeremiah shook my hand. You look worried. I have reasons, I replied, escorting him into the living room. I told him everything, how I had bought a house for Thatcher and Ottilie, registering it in my name, how they had gradually drained me of money, how I had learned today of their plans to send me to a nursing home and sell both houses. Jeremiah listened without interrupting, only frowning more deeply with each word I spoke. Damn crooks, he said when I finished. And that guy is your son? I can't believe it. I couldn't either, I replied, until I saw all the evidence. I showed him the photos of the documents and correspondence I had taken at Thatcher's house. Jeremiah looked at them carefully, shaking his head. This is a legal matter, Vren, he said. Document forgery, fraud. You could report it to the police. And then what? I shrugged. Thatcher is my son. I don't want to see him in prison, despite everything he's done. So what are you planning to do? Just take what is rightfully mine, I said, taking the documents for the house in South Hill out of the folder. This house is mine. I want to sell it as quickly as possible. What if Thatcher has already found a buyer? The sales documents are forged. I showed him a photo of the fake contract. The deal is illegal. We can sell the house before they realize it. Jeremiah thought about it, tapping his fingers on the folder. I have a buyer, he finally said. A family from Seattle. They're looking for a house in this exact neighborhood. They're willing to pay a good price and close the deal quickly. How quickly? If we start the process tonight, everything could be ready by noon tomorrow. Great, I nodded. What about this house? I gestured toward the living room where we were sitting. That's more complicated, Jeremiah sighed. A quick sale usually means a price below market value. Are you sure you want to sell the house you've lived in your whole life? I looked around at the old photographs on the walls, the worn armchair where Garrick loved to read the newspaper, the bookshelves filled with novels and engineering reference books. So many memories, so many years. I'm sure, I replied firmly. There are too many ghosts here. Okay, Jeremiah nodded. Then we need to move fast. I'll make some calls. While he was on the phone on the porch, I went upstairs and started packing. A few clothes, some books, a photo album. Everything else could be left behind. Material things had never meant much to me. Not expensive jewelry, fashionable furniture, or collectible porcelain. The most valuable things I could take with me were my memories, my experiences, and my sense of self-worth. Jeremiah returned 20 minutes later, animated and businesslike. The buyers for the house in South Hill have agreed to come tomorrow at 9 in the morning, he said. As for this house, I have a client who buys real estate to rent out. He can look at the house tomorrow afternoon and make a decision right away. That's wonderful, I smiled. Thank you, Jeremiah. You're welcome. He patted me on the shoulder. We still need to cancel all the wedding orders, right? I nodded. That was the next part of my plan. Do you have a list of all the places they made reservations? No, but I know the main ones. I took a piece of paper and started writing. Clementine's Restaurant, Bloom Flower Shop, Sweet Dreams Bakery. And there was a photo studio, but I don't remember the name. Don't worry. Jeremiah took out his phone. I know pretty much everyone in the wedding industry in Spokane. We'll find out for the next 2 hours. We called all the places where Thatcher and Attili had placed orders for the wedding. I introduced myself as the groom's mother and said that the wedding was canceled due to family circumstances. Many expressed regret. Some reminded me of non-refundable deposits. But overall, everyone was understanding. Weddings get canceled. It's part of the business. The Clementine restaurant was particularly kind. The manager I had spoken to earlier recognized my voice and expressed sincere sympathy. It's always hard, Mrs. Quill, she said, but sometimes canceling a wedding is better than a marriage doomed to unhappiness. I didn't explain what had happened. I just thanked her for her understanding. By midnight, we had finished making all the calls. All the orders had been canceled. All the arrangements canceled. There would be no wedding. What about joint accounts? Jeremiah asked, leaning back in his chair. We only have one. The one I opened for household expenses, I replied. I already withdrew all the money from it this afternoon. Okay, he nodded. What about the evidence? You said you wanted to put it all in one folder. Yes, I said, getting up and walking over to the table. Help me print out the photos I took. We spent another hour printing and organizing all the evidence. Photos of the fake documents, screenshots of Thatcher's correspondence with Orion, the contract with Sunny Valley, the fake house purchase agreement. I added bank statements showing how my account balance had changed over the past 6 months. And I wrote a short note, just a few sentences, but they contained everything I wanted to say. Do you think they'll understand that you arranged all this? Jeremiah asked, looking at the finished folder. Of course, I smiled, but they won't be able to prove anything. The houses belong to me, and so does the money. I have every right to dispose of my property as I see fit. Where will you go after this is all over? I thought about it. I didn't have a specific plan, just a general direction. First to a motel, I said, and then, maybe the coast. I've always wanted to live by the ocean. Sounds good, Jeremiah smiled. Will you need help finding a new place? I'll be fine, I shook my head. You've already done more than enough for me. Jeremiah left around 2 in the morning, promising to return at 8 to drive me to the house in South Hill to meet with the buyers. I was left alone in the quiet house, listening to the old wall clock ticking in the living room. Sleep wouldn't come. I sat by the window, looking out at the dark garden, thinking about Thatcher, about the little boy who used to be afraid of haircuts and hid under the bed, about the teenager who blamed me for his father leaving, about the grown man who decided to deceive his mother for money. Where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? Maybe I worked too much and didn't spend enough time with him? Or, on the contrary, did I overprotect him, not giving him room to grow? Or was it something else entirely? His genes, his environment, a random coincidence? There were no answers, only the silence of the night and a heaviness in my chest. Not quite pain, more a feeling of irreplaceable loss. It was as if I had buried my son, even though he was alive and well. Maybe that was the case. I was mourning not Thatcher the man, but Thatcher the son, who no longer existed in my life. Towards dawn, I finally dozed off in my chair, but woke up to the sound of the alarm clock at 7 in the morning. I quickly took a shower, drank some coffee, and packed the last of my things into my suitcase. I looked back at the house where I had lived most of my life and realized that I didn't feel any particular attachment to it. They were just walls, just rooms. A real home is not a place, but a state of mind, and my soul had long since found no peace here. Jeremiah arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, as promised. We loaded my things into his car and drove to South Hill. On the way, he told me about the buyers. a couple from Seattle who were moving to Spokane because of the husband's job. "They're nice people," Jeremiah said. "2 kids, a dog. They'll be happy in this house." I listened and nodded, thinking that I could have been happy in this house too, if things had turned out differently. If Thatcher had married a good girl who really loved him. If they had invited me over for Sunday dinners instead of planning to send me to a nursing home. If Thatcher's car wasn't parked outside the house in South Hill when we arrived. I breathed a sigh of relief. That meant he hadn't returned from his bachelor party or wherever he had spent the night before the wedding. Or maybe he had already left for the restaurant to check on the final preparations, which were no longer there. We entered the house through the back door. I had the keys, after all. It was legally my house. Inside, it still smelled of paint and glue, and boxes were stacked against the walls. I walked into the living room and placed the folder with the evidence on the coffee table, right in plain sight, where Thatcher or Ottilie would be sure to notice it when they returned. "Are you sure you want to leave this folder for them?" Jeremiah asked. "Maybe it's better to just leave without explaining anything?" "No," I shook my head. "I want them to know. I want them to understand that I'm not the helpless old woman they thought I was. And I want them to see all the evidence of their betrayal, in black and white." Jeremiah nodded without arguing. He had known me long enough to understand that once I had made up my mind, there was no turning back. The buyers arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, a young couple, just as Jeremiah had said. They looked excited and happy, talking about their plans for renovations, how they would furnish the children's rooms, where they would put the Christmas tree. An ordinary family building an ordinary happiness. Something that would never happen to Thatcher and Ottilie, because their wedding was just part of a fraudulent scheme. We signed all the documents right there in the living room. A large check was handed to me, and the keys were handed to the new owners. Everything was legal. Everything was correct. They asked when they could move in, and I replied that they could move in today. The house was already empty and ready for occupancy. They just needed to remove the boxes of the previous tenants. "You can put them out on the street," I said, "or throw them away. Whatever is more convenient for you." The buyers looked a little surprised by the suggestion, but didn't object. We shook hands and they left, promising to return in the evening with their belongings. "What's next?" Jeremiah asked, when we were alone in what was now no longer my house. "Now we're going to my place," I said, putting the check in my bag. I need to meet with the buyer of my house." We drove back in my car. Jeremiah left his at his house in South Hill, saying he would pick it up later. On the way, I stopped at the bank and deposited the check into a new account I had opened specifically for this purpose. The money would be available in a few days, but that didn't matter. I had enough cash to get me through the initial period. The buyer for my house arrived at noon. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit, with the cold eyes of an appraiser. He looked over the house quickly, asked a few questions about the utilities and the condition of the roof, and then named his price. Well below market value, just as Jeremiah had warned. "That's all I can offer for an urgent sale," he said. "If you want to sell for more, you'll have to wait a few months." "I'm fine with that price," I replied. We signed the papers, and I received another check. The buyer asked when I would vacate the house. "Tonight," I said. "By 9 o'clock. No one will be here." He nodded, shook my hand, and left, glancing around the house appraisingly as he left, as if already calculating how much he could earn from renting it out. "Well, that's it," Jeremiah said when we were alone again. "2 houses sold in one day. Not every realtor can boast such a result." I smiled, sincerely, for the first time in days. "Thank you, Jeremiah. I couldn't have done it without you." "Nonsense." He waved his hand. "I'm glad I could help." "Now you have something else to do, right?" I nodded. The last item on my list was to cancel the orders I hadn't had time to cancel yesterday. Most of them were minor things, some decorations, makeup artist services, limousine rental, but there was one important order that I had deliberately left for last: the wedding cake. The Sweet Dreams Bakery was located in the city center. I went there alone. Jeremiah stayed at my house to help pack the remaining things. The owner of the bakery, a plump woman with a kind face, greeted me with a smile. "How can I help you?" "I'm Thatcher Quill's mother," I said. "You're making the cake for his wedding today." "Oh, yes, of course," she beamed. "A 3-tier cake with lavender cream and fresh flowers. It's already ready. We're just finishing the decorations. Would you like to take a look?" "No, thank you." I shook my head. "I'm here to tell you that the wedding is off." The smile faded from her face. "Off? But the cake is already done." "I know, and I'm willing to pay the full price," I said, taking out my wallet. "But there won't be a wedding." She looked confused. "I'm so sorry," she finally said. "It was going to be such a beautiful celebration." "I'm sorry, too," I replied. "But sometimes these things happen." I paid for the cake and was about to leave when she called after me. "What should we do with the cake? Would you like us to deliver it somewhere? Or will you take it with you?" I thought for a moment. "You know what? Give it to the orphanage on West Street. Let the children enjoy it." She smiled, and understanding appeared in her eyes. "I will." That's a good idea. I left the bakery with a sense of accomplishment. All orders canceled, all accounts closed, all houses sold. Now all that was left was to pack the last few things and leave. Quietly, without loud words or explanations, just as I had planned. When I got home, I found that Jeremiah had already packed most of what I wanted to take with me: clothes, books, a few mementos. I decided to leave the rest to the new owner. Let them do what they wanted with it. "Where are you going now?" Jeremiah asked as we loaded the last boxes into my car. "To the Pine Forest Motel outside of town," I replied. "I'll stay there for a few days until I decide where to go next." "Call me if you need anything," he said, hugging me goodbye. "And let me know when you settle into your new place." "I will," I smiled. Thanks again for everything." I got in the car and drove out of the yard, without looking back at the house where I had lived most of my life. In the rearview mirror, I saw Jeremiah's silhouette waving at me, but then the road turned and everything disappeared from view. The clock on the dashboard showed 6 o'clock in the evening. There were 2 hours left before the failed wedding. I wonder if Thatcher has realized that something is wrong. Had he called the restaurant to check the final details and found out that the order had been canceled? Or was he still preparing for the ceremony, unaware that there would be no ceremony? And Ottilia? Had she already put on the expensive dress I had paid for? Had she done her hair and makeup? Is she waiting for the moment when she can walk down the aisle, where she will be met not by Thatcher, but by emptiness? And what about Orion? Does he already know that their plan has failed? That all their efforts, all their deceit, all their tricks have come to nothing? I didn't know the answers to these questions, and to be honest, I didn't really want to know. My part of the story was over. I did what I had to do. I protected myself, my property, my dignity. No drama, no threats, no loud words. Just methodically and consistently, as I had always done everything in my life. The Pine Forest Motel was 20 kilometers from Spokane. Far enough that Thatcher couldn't find me right away, but close enough that I could return to the city if necessary. It looked clean and well kept. Neat wooden houses surrounded by pine trees, a small lake nearby. I rented a room for a week, paying cash in advance. After unpacking and settling into the room, I finally allowed myself to relax. I kicked off my shoes, lay down on the bed, and closed my eyes. My body was buzzing from the tension of the last few days, but my mind was clear and calm. I had done everything I could. Now all I had to do was wait and see what would happen next. I turned off my phone earlier that day, right after calling the bakery. I didn't want to hear from Thatcher or Attili when they realized what had happened. I didn't want to hear their excuses, accusations, or pleas. Everything I needed to say was written in a note I left in the folder with the evidence. You wanted me to disappear from your family. I did just that. But first, I took what was rightfully mine. The houses are sold, the accounts are closed, the wedding is canceled. Don't try to find me. Don't try to explain. Vren, just a few lines, but they contained everything: my pain, my disappointment, my determination, and my final goodbye to the son I lost not today, but much earlier. Perhaps on the day when a 12-year-old boy asked, "What did you do to make him leave?" It was getting dark outside. The room was quiet, only the clock on the wall ticking away the seconds. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking that tomorrow would be a new day. A day when I would start a new life. Without Thatcher, without Otili, without the burden of the past. A day when I would be truly free. I woke up early. A habit developed over years of working the morning shift at the water treatment plant. Outside the motel room window, the pine trees rustled, and the sun was just rising above the horizon. The room was quiet and peaceful. No phone calls, no demands, no obligations. For the first time in many years, I could just lie there and think about what to do next. My phone was still off, and I was in no hurry to turn it on. I didn't want to know what was happening in Spokane, how Thatcher and Attili had reacted to the cancellation of the wedding, the sale of the houses, my disappearance. But curiosity is a strange thing. It gnaws at you from the inside, won't let you rest, forces you to look for answers, even when you're sure you don't want to know them. Around 10 in the morning, I finally turned on my phone. It immediately exploded with notifications. 27 missed calls, 15 messages, all from Thatcher. I didn't listen to or read them, I just deleted them. But I decided to make one call. To Jeremiah. He was my eyes and ears in the city, and I needed to know what was going on. Vren! Jeremiah's voice sounded agitated. I was about to go to the motel to check if you were okay. Everything's fine, I replied. I just turned off my phone. I didn't want any unnecessary conversations. I understand, he sighed. There's so much going on here. Thatcher called me last night, yelling and threatening. He asked where you were. What did you tell him? The truth. That I don't know. I really don't know exactly which motel you're staying at. I deliberately didn't tell Jeremiah the name of the motel so that he could answer honestly if Thatcher started questioning him. My old friend was a man of principle, but I didn't want to put him in an awkward position. How did it go yesterday? I asked, settling into the chair by the window. Oh, it was something, Jeremiah chuckled. I didn't see everything myself, but the manager at Clementine's and the new owners of the house in South Hill told me about it. The whole town is talking about it. Tell me about it, I asked. Well, Jeremiah began. Thatcher arrived at the restaurant around 4 o'clock to check that everything was ready for the ceremony, and then the manager told him that the order had been canceled. Of course, he thought it was some kind of mistake. He started yelling, demanding to see the manager, and the manager showed him the documents. The order had been canceled last night by the groom's mother. That is, you. All deposits were lost. The hall had already been given to other people, and the banquet was not being prepared. I imagined Thatcher's face at that moment. Confused, angry, bewildered. He had the same expression when he found out that his father had left the family. He calls Ottilie, Jeremiah continued, but she doesn't answer. Then he calls the flower shop. Same thing, the order has been canceled. The photographer, the musicians, the limousine, everything has been canceled. He rushes home in a panic, and there are new owners. I finished for him. Exactly. A young couple from Seattle had just arrived to look at the house. Their realtor was showing them the rooms. They were discussing where to put the sofa, and then Thatcher bursts in and yells that it's his house. Can you imagine their shock? I can. I smiled involuntarily, imagining the scene. The realtor shows him the documents. The house was sold legally. All the paperwork is in order. Thatcher yells that it's impossible, that the house couldn't have been sold without his knowledge, and the realtor explains that the house belonged to Vren Quill, and she had every right to sell it. Thatcher turns pale, grabs his head, and starts calling you, but of course, you don't answer. I remembered how Thatcher insisted that the house be registered in my name, supposedly for convenience with the mortgage. In fact, he and Atelier were planning to send me to a nursing home and sell the house, pocketing the money. How ironic. Their own plan backfired on them. And Atelier? I asked. Was she with him? No, she showed up later. Jeremiah cleared his throat. According to the realtor, she arrived around 6 in the evening, all dressed up, with her hair and makeup done. Apparently, she was getting ready for the ceremony and didn't know it had been canceled. By that time, Thatcher had already found the folder with the evidence you left behind. I gripped the phone tighter. Here it was, the climax of the whole story. And what happened next? Oh, it was like a scene from a soap opera, Jeremiah chuckled. Adelie enters the house, sees strangers, and freezes in the doorway. Thatcher is sitting on the living room floor, holding the folder and staring at her as if he wants to kill her. She asks what's going on, and instead of answering, he shows her the photos of her with Orion. I imagined the scene so vividly, as if I were there. Atelier in an expensive champagne-colored dress, which I paid for, with an elaborate hairstyle and perfect makeup, and Thatcher on the floor, surrounded by strangers' boxes, with evidence of betrayal in his hands. She tried to deny everything, Jeremiah continued. She said the photos were fake, that it was all your doing, that you were just a jealous old woman who didn't want to let her son go. But Thatcher showed her the correspondence. The one you photographed on his phone. It was all there. Their relationship with Orion and the plan to deceive you. Who told you all these details? I asked, even though I already guessed. The new owners of the house, Jeremiah confirmed. They didn't know what to do, whether to leave or stay, whether to call the police or not. In the end, they just sat in the kitchen and listened to the whole scandal. And then they called me, because I was their realtor, and asked what to do with Thatcher and Otilie's belongings. And what did they decide? They put everything out on the street, just like you suggested. Jeremiah sighed. Thatcher and Ottilie had already left by then, each going their separate ways, not together. I closed my eyes, imagining the consequences of my actions. Two people who were going to get married, albeit fictitiously, now hate each other. All their plans were ruined, all their dreams of easy money shattered. And I played a decisive role in that. There's something else, Jeremiah said after a pause. Martha from Sweet Dreams Bakery called me. Yes? I tensed up. Something with the cake? No, the cake is fine. It was delivered to the orphanage as you requested. But there's something else. Orion came to see her. Orion? I was surprised. Why? He was looking for you, Jeremiah grunted. Apparently, Thatcher called him after the scandal with Atelier, and he decided to find out what was going on. Martha said he was furious, shouting that you had ruined all their plans, that they had been preparing for this scam for 3 months. Scam, I repeated. Is that what he said? Exactly. Martha was in shock. She called me because she knew we were friends. She asked if you needed help, if she could protect you somehow. I smiled, touched by the concern of a woman I barely knew. What did you tell her? That you're safe and there's no need to worry. Jeremiah paused. But Vren, maybe you should file a report with the police. After all, they were planning a serious fraud. No! I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. I don't want to get involved with the police. It's all over now. I protected myself and my property. The rest is none of my concern. As you wish, Jeremiah sighed. But be careful. Thatcher is very angry. He called me again this morning, demanding your address. You didn't tell him, did you? I tensed up. Of course not, Jeremiah snorted. I told him you'd left the state. Let him look for you somewhere in Oregon or California. I smiled gratefully. Jeremiah had always been a good friend. Thank you. For everything, you're welcome, he replied. Keep me posted, okay? And if you need anything, call me. After talking to Jeremiah, I sat by the window for a long time, looking at the pine trees and thinking about what had happened in Spokane last night. The picture was vivid and lifelike, as if I had seen it with my own eyes. Here is Thatcher bursting into Clementine's restaurant, confident that everything is going according to plan. His wedding to Ottilie is a perfect performance designed to convince me to give them my last money and then allow myself to be sent to a nursing home. He expects to see a decorated hall, tables covered with white tablecloths, floral arrangements of white peonies. Instead, there is emptiness and a cold message from the administrator. Your order has been canceled. He calls the flower shop, the photographer, the musicians. Everywhere. It's the same story. Everything is canceled. The groom's mother called last night and canceled all the orders. The deposits are lost. No refunds. There will be no wedding. He rushes home, to the very house I bought for them, registered in my name. Questions swirl in his head. What's going on? Why did Mom cancel everything? Where is she? And perhaps even more disturbing thoughts. Did she find out? But how? We were so careful. He pulls up to the house and sees an unfamiliar car in the driveway. He rushes inside and finds strangers already planning how to furnish his living room. "This is my house!" he shouts, and in response hears a calm reply. "No, this is our house. We bought it this morning from Mrs. Quill stunned. He sinks to the living room floor and sees a folder on the coffee table. He opens it and finds all the evidence of his betrayal. Photos of forged documents, bank statements, screenshots of his correspondence with Orion. And my short note. You wanted me to disappear from your family. I did just that. But first, I took what was rightfully mine. The houses are sold, the accounts are closed, the wedding is canceled. Don't try to find me. Don't try to explain. Vren. Here comes Ottilie, beautiful, dressed up, ready for her role in their play. She doesn't know yet that the play has been canceled, that the audience has left, that the sets have been taken down. She sees Thatcher on the floor, the folder in his hands, strangers in their house. What's going on? She asks, and in response, receives a photograph of herself kissing Orion in front of some motel. Explain? Thatcher says, his voice not sounding jealous, but angry because his plans have been ruined. It's fake, Ottilie replies, but her voice is shaking. Your mother set it all up. She just doesn't want us to be happy. Is this fake too? Thatcher shows her a printout of their correspondence with Orion. Your fiancé sends her regards. He sent that to me, remember? Ottilie turns pale. She didn't know that I had seen this correspondence, that I had photographed it, that I had kept it in a folder with other evidence. Thatcher, listen, it's not what you think. No, it's exactly what I think, he interrupts. You've been sleeping with Orion all this time. You've both been deceiving me. And you? Ottilie suddenly explodes. You deceived your own mother. You used me as a cover to get money out of her. We've all been deceiving each other, so don't act like you're the victim. The new owners of the house watch this scene from the kitchen in shock, not knowing what to do. Thatcher and Ottilie continue to yell at each other, spilling all the truths they've been hiding for so long. I only agreed to this scam because you promised to pay me well, Ottilie yells. $50,000 to play your fiancé, remember? And then you said there was no money, that we had to wait until your mother gave us her last savings. I would have paid if everything had gone according to plan, Thatcher yells. But you couldn't keep your legs together, could you? You had to sleep with my best friend. Your best friend? Ottilie laughs, but there is no joy in her laughter. Thatcher, you and Orion have been sleeping together since college. He told me everything. How you planned this scam. How you were going to run away together after you got the money from selling your mother's house. Thatcher freezes, his face contorted with rage. He shouldn't have told you. It was between us. Oh, is that so? Atelier shakes her head. God, you're such a hypocrite. You accused me of cheating on you when you were planning to run away with Orion, leaving me with nothing. Nothing? Thatcher snorts. You would have gotten your 50,000, as we agreed. And then what? Ottilie crosses her arms over her chest. You would have left, and I would have stayed here in Spokane with the reputation of a jilted bride? You could have gone anywhere with that money, Thatcher snaps. But now we have nothing. No money, no house, not even a damn wedding. And whose fault is that? Ottilie looks at him with contempt. Certainly not mine. Your mother ruined everything, and you know what? She's smarter than we all thought. Much smarter. Thatcher is silent, pondering her words. Then he suddenly grabs his car keys and heads for the door. Where are you going? Ottilie asks. To find my mother, he says over his shoulder. She couldn't have gone far. Someone in this town must know where she is. What about me? Ottilie spreads her arms. What should I do? I don't care, Thatcher replies, already standing in the doorway. You can go to Orion. You two deserve each other. He leaves, slamming the door so hard that plaster falls from the ceiling. Ottilie is left alone in the living room, confused and angry. She notices the new owners of the house still sitting in the kitchen and realizes that this is really the end. The house is sold, the wedding is canceled, the scam is exposed. It's all over. Do you need help with your things? The man asks uncertainly. No, Ottilie replies coldly. Leave everything as it is. I have nothing left to do here. She also leaves without looking back. The new owners look at each other, not knowing what to do with their remaining belongings. In the end, they decide to put the boxes out on the street, as I suggested. Let Thatcher and Ottilie deal with their own property. Meanwhile, Thatcher is rushing around town trying to find me. He calls everyone who might know where I am. Neighbors, former colleagues, even an old friend I haven't spoken to in years. No one knows anything, or no one wants to say anything. Finally, he comes to Jeremiah, knowing that we were friends. He knocks on the door so loudly that the neighbors look out of their windows. Jeremiah opens the door, and Thatcher pounces on him with questions. Where is she? Where did she go? You must know. I don't know, Jeremiah replies calmly. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Why? Thatcher looks at him with fury. Don't you understand what she's done? She ruined my life. No. Jeremiah shakes his head. You ruined your own life when you decided to deceive your own mother, when you decided to send her to a nursing home and take everything that belonged to her. Vren just defended herself. And she did it damn cleverly. Thatcher doesn't know how to respond. He understands that Jeremiah is right, but he doesn't want to admit it. Pride is his main weakness, always has been, and always will be. Tell her, if you see her, he finally says, that she'll regret this. No one has the right to treat me like this. No one, not even your mother? Jeremiah asks. The woman who raised you alone, who worked 2 jobs so you could go to a good university? Who bought you a house and paid for your wedding, even though she knew you didn't love her? Thatcher is silent, his face contorted with a mixture of anger and shame. Just tell her, he repeats and leaves without saying goodbye. Meanwhile, Ottilie arrives at Orion's place. She knocks on the door of his apartment, but no one answers. She calls him, but his phone is off. She doesn't know that Orion is also looking for me, that he is furious about his plans being ruined, that he has already been to the Sweet Dreams bakery and was yelling about some kind of scam. Ottilie sits down on the steps in front of Orion's house and starts to cry. Her tears smudge the perfect makeup she did for the wedding that will never happen, the money she will never receive, the future that has been destroyed. Thus ends the day of the failed wedding of Thatcher Quill and Ottilie Pendergast. The day when all masks were torn off, all secrets revealed, all illusions destroyed. The day when I proved that I am not the helpless old woman they thought I was.